Okay, Michelle's here, so that's perfect. Okay, so Michelle just is joining. Let me give her a second. There she is. Audio. Great. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get the planning board meeting underway. First item is whether there's anyone who wishes to speak at privilege of the floor. I know that you don't, and I don't see anyone in Zoom land. So there will be no privilege of the floor. So then we'll move right on to our presentation. So with us is Chuck Schwartz, the Director of Agrivoltaics at the New York State Solar Farm. I guess you guys are located in Hudson Valley. And
Yes,
and I'm sure what Brad has told you, but we've been revising a local solar energy siting law to sort of make it at least definitely not unfriendly towards agrivoltaics and really trying to encourage a certain amount of combined agriculture and photovoltaic generation. And so we are sort of in the winding stages of that, and it is great to hear from you about some sort of things, projects you've been involved in, because we're always eager to hear about things that isn't just sheep grazing the land, which is nice in its own way, but we're excited to hear there's many other kinds of opportunities. So anything you can tell us about the sort of things you've been doing will be great. I think I've given you the power to start a slideshow when you wish, and if not, we'll have to work some Zoom magic here.
yeah, I think I got it. Yeah, here we go. All right. So assuming I did that right, and that's always an assumption,
There we
you
go.
would now see my screen and you would see a solar array with a tractor coming down with a rabbit in front of it.
Yes. Yes,
Excellent.
exactly.
Excellent. Okay, great. So, a little bit about me. I've spent decades working on energy, renewable energy, and efficiency programs with NYSERDA, with local municipalities. And starting about 8 years ago, I focused all my attention on commercial solar power. I'm downstate, so a lot of that is rooftop type things, but also ground mounts and solar farms and things like that. About 3 years ago, I started to work with a French company, Sun Agri, who have a very interesting technology for agrivoltaics, and was successful in putting together a number of projects. One is with Cornell Laboratory. It's in the Hudson Valley. Another is with a peach farm in Colorado, and a third is uh, with Washington State University near in the Spokane area. And unfortunately, I had to drop working with Sun Agri because I would have had to have been on the road quite a bit, and my wife became quite ill, and I just couldn't make it happen. But so I'm not working on agrivoltaics per se right now, but I've got a lot of good experience. And Brad asked me just to kind of set the stage for you all to, you were saying about the sheep. By the way, I think sheep are great. Um, but just to kind of set the stage, help you make sure you understand. Because to me, if you're going to be looking to write codes or, really dig deep in terms of what people should be allowed or not allowed to do with solar, the integration of agriculture and power generation makes a ton of sense. And it makes a ton of sense for some reasons that you may not even realize. And we'll kind of go into those in a couple minutes. So, any questions? Ready to proceed?
Go ahead.
Excellent. Okay. So didn't move. Okay. Okay, so the definition, agrivoltaics, and there's different terms floating around, but it's really either agrivoltaics or dual use solar. And so we're using the same land to generate power as well as produce crops or provide some type of agricultural or environmental service. And it works really well, by the way. So kind of break up agrivoltaics into three separate categories. The first is the grazing, which has a place. Second is utilizing the space under the solar to improve the biodiversity of the area, particularly as it relates to pollinators. And the third is what I call dynamic agrivoltaics, but it doesn't really have to be completely dynamic, and I'll explain the difference in a few minutes. But it's farming or vineyards or it's crop production. So could be row crops, could be vineyards, could be fruit trees, and there's really good examples, particularly in Europe, of all of those. And it's really advantageous to the farmer. So, is there any examples in your area of solar fields with sheep now providing the mowing service, for lack of a better
Yes.
word?
Yes,
How big are those fields?
in Dryden, I don't remember how many acres.
Couple megawatts.
Okay, so the PV is maybe a couple megawatts, and how many acres, I think we don't know.
Right, but
So they're in
it's
the adjoining town.
it's a fixed tilt system with, it looks like this, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
fixed tilt, it's not
Gotcha.
not a moving type of thing, and it's probably tied into community solar in some fashion. And
I don't think that one is.
No, it's,
Bill might know
usually
more.
if it's a smaller one, it would be, if it gets bigger, then it might be, utility
it-
scale.
Yeah, no, it's not a
an
utility.
early, it was an early development. Like
Oh, okay,
early to our area.
got it. And then, so the sheep came later, I guess. It wasn't part of the original planning.
It was actually, well, before they actually did the build out, it became part of the plan.
Oh, I think I know the project you're talking about, because I know the person. I don't know if you realized it, but solar grazing, the whole concept was started in the upstate New York. And
Well, we certainly have a very active and vocal local supporter of it and proponent of it who's gone around the country. So
yeah, I
he
think
might
we're
have gotten
talking about the
involved.
same person. I forgot her name.
No, it's a guy.
His name.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, different person. Then maybe they worked together. But this is becoming a pretty large thing there around the country at this point. So what are we talking about? We're putting sheep or other animals under solar. We do have examples now of cattle. We do have examples now of dairy under solar. And it really is helpful. It certainly is helpful for the people who have the solar fields, because it saves them money in mowing. It's actually less expensive to do it this way, even bringing in, because there's people that just run businesses now having flocks that they just move from place to place. But it's also advantageous for the animals because of the shade, and it works out quite well. So again, you're familiar, but it allows continued farming and food production. Farmers can increase their revenue, even though to a large extent, it's kind of like a third party providing it. It's adding dairy, meat, and wool to the marketplace. And from an operational standpoint, it lowers the costs. So the second, and I don't know if you're as familiar with this as you are with the animals, is there's a lot of examples now of plantings under solar being planned in advance to be more pollinator friendly. Originally, I'm here on Long Island, and we have in the Riverhead area a bunch of solar farms, and they were just grass. And in some cases, they were, you know, the originals were even just stone under the entire fields. And doesn't help the, you know, the environment at all. So what we're talking about here is using different plants, working with agronomists, working with you know, Cornell Extension, people like that, and gives us the ability to attract bees and butterflies, folks like that. And at the same time, we're reducing erosion and improving water quality.
Do you have a sense with pollinator-oriented solar farms, how common it is then for honey production to also be part of that?
That's exactly what happens. They'll put hives right in the same area.
So you're saying typically that would be done?
That's it makes a ton of sense. Yes, correct. There's a utility, I forgot the name of it. There's a utility in Illinois, I believe it is, that actually, because I guess there in those areas it's different than in New York, because in New York utilities don't provide their own solar systems, but out there they can, and that's what they're doing. And they're actually now have I guess they have solar honey for sale in stores.
And your chart anticipates the question I was going to ask you. You said it's less mowing than other ground covers. So that's actually where I was about to ask about, is whether, you know, depending, of course, on the height of the plant species grown and the height of the panels, whether you do mowing at all in these. And like, looks like you do some, but less than you otherwise have to do.
Exactly, and it would be based around time of year more.
How so? How based on time of year? What do you mean by that?
Well, during the growing season, when the plants are blooming, you don't want to mow because you want the bees and butterflies and folks like that to be going into the fields. Come, you know, October, November, when that stuff has died off, that might be a time that you would cut back and even place a cover crop.
So are there issues with too much moisture and not being able to get into the fields, you know, early or late in the year?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't understand. I apologize.
Is the soil too wet to be able to get into the fields to mow in the spring or in the fall?
It could be. I mean, it's going to depend on the year. I mean, we've had some pretty wacky rainy weather in the last couple of years. So could be, but there wouldn't be any different if it was grass or if it was these types of fields, really. That's my understanding. There should
Doug,
be.
do you guys have a standard? Does anybody have a sort of standard recommended template for a pollinator mix and or like rotation? You mentioned that you grow pollinators perhaps during the summer and then in the fall plow it under and plant a cover crop. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I never really worked that much with this, but I
Sure.
can get you names of vendors that have solar pollinator seed mixes,
Gotcha.
if that would be helpful.
Yeah, would be. Thank you.
Yeah, let me write that down because I'll
Yeah,
forget it in
yeah,
the next
that'd
3
be great.
seconds.
And I get you, because I am excellent at saying I'll do something and forgetting in the middle of the talk.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you're writing it down.
Immediately I'll forget it.
Yeah. And I'll ask one further follow-up on that.
Okay.
So is it anticipated, maybe you may not know this, would you anticipate like an annual mowing if you're doing a pollinator type mix? Or again, is it maybe 2 or 3 times a year? Any sense of mowing frequency? We ask in part because that's mowing time of year, mowing frequency is something we've been talking about in this committee for the last couple of meetings.
Again, I'm not really the right person to answer that operational side of
Okay.
it, but I think the folks that I put you in touch with about the seed mixes and things would probably be able to give you a better sense on that.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So now we'll talk about the stuff that I've worked on. So first of all, is this your, yeah, let me get rid of that because you probably saw yourselves blocking the screen. So now what we're talking about is growing crops under solar. And there's a lot of different examples floating around. There's a place in Colorado called Jack's Solar Garden. I don't know if that's something you've heard of. It would be worthwhile to go and take a look at their website. And if you ever get out to the Denver area, even go check it out. It's pretty amazing. They are one of the leaders in this type of technology. But in Europe, they're way ahead of us. And it's in Europe, Israel, and the Far East are way ahead of us in this, but we're catching up pretty quick. So we're putting solar over crops, and it has to be high enough to be able to run equipment as well as, you know, the height of the plants. And in the case of the technology I was working on, it's actually a system to control the tracking of the solar. This is on a fixed tilt, excuse me, a single axis tilt solar system. I'm not sure that's familiar term
Yeah.
to you, but
Yeah, we
it
are familiar.
moves. It moves. Typically, you use it and you move with the sun to try to maximize the solar potential. In this case, it's more innovative because what it's doing is while we're trying to generate power, and that's, you know, an important aspect of it, there's also some real benefits to the plants that I'm going to show you in a minute from having the solar over the plants. So these are kinds of the reasons why this is important. Climate change. You know, I hate to tell you, I know our government is now saying that we don't have a climate crisis. I don't totally agree with that, to be quite honest. You know, there's a lot of difficult things happening, you know, and in different areas of the country, we have severe drought. Europe had a lot of drought for years. In our case, we've probably had too much rain in the last couple of years. I mean, I work in the Hudson Valley on a lot of projects, and we had floods like every year we're getting floods. At the same time, we're able to actually, like I said, positively impact the crops. And the way we're doing that is by really temperature control more than anything else. We're able to shade during the hottest times of the year, so we're able to reduce the stress on the plants. And we're also able to assist to reduce frost damage, which is certainly something that would be important in your area. And while we're doing that, we're generating electricity, putting it into a grid, say community solar or some other method. And what it's done is, kind of from a technical standpoint, there are sensors in the field, moisture sensors, temperature sensors, there's a weather station. All the inputs from that get put into a software system that is going to ultimately control the pitch on a real-time basis of the tilt of the solar panels.
All right, so I'm gonna stop you there for a second, just to
Yeah.
make sure we fully have it. So basically, there's a bunch of data feeding into some optimization for how to tilt the panels. And I assume one of those is the amount of sunshine too, meaning they know where the sun is and they're trying to produce electric power. But you're saying in addition to what one would normally do, just track the sun, is extra inputs about the temperature and the moisture and similar things like that are being fed in, and then maybe modifying what might be the optimum photovoltaic angle in order to help better protect the crops. So it's a optimization of everything.
I would argue it a little differently.
Okay,
I would argue that we're going to use this as a way to improve the agriculture while at the same time generating a good amount of power for with value.
right. So that's my question is how, that was exactly the question. What is the emphasis? So if the emphasis is simply on protecting the crops and the solar is be what it may, is that what I'm hearing from you now?
In a perfect world, the problem is in the imperfect world we're in, we have investors. I mean, these are expensive projects, as we all know, and raising the systems higher over the crops and over tractors and adding this technology to the mix raises the price even higher. And so, the real question is how do you make the economics work so that people will invest, so the folks that the developers will invest the capital to do the solar while at the same time, it gets farmed under. And there's some companies that have figured out a way to do it. They're pretty innovative. I actually had given at a conference about a year and a half ago a presentation specifically on this topic. Because look, if I'm going to go and I'm going to tilt these panels to certain times of the day when it could be very sunny to allow for increased sun to the plants, increased photosynthesis, I'm not going to produce as much power. And you'll see typically what we kind of call curtailment of around 20 to 25% of the electric production because of the optimization for the plants.
Okay, go ahead. We have a question here, Will. Go ahead.
So is somebody following the market prices or the typical cost, clearing in the market for energy? Is that part of the input?
Somewhat. I mean, it's more a matter of how much it really depends on the way that the systems get installed. If I'm putting this on a farmer's land that's going to own that system, like that area I was telling you about, Jack's Solar Garden, that's going to be different than if it's an investor who's just coming in to try to make as much money as possible, which is, the typical, solar farm that we see installed. I mean, they try to build them as cheap as possible and get as much money out of them as possible. And it becomes a kind of a challenge to make the projects work because of that. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it sounds like they have a sort of a difficult optimization problem with different competing interests, which is what I would expect. It's not a surprise.
I would say the answer is we have to come up with more creativity and everybody needs to be a little less greedy because look, it sounds like I need to jump to that presentation I was telling you about that I made about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, because really what ends up happening is, look, you guys are involved in talking to developers who are coming in with potential projects. And, the projects are hard enough to make happen right off the bat because of the grid connectivity being so scattered. There's there's tons of people who have land, but I guess who's your utility, National Grid or NYSEG?
NYSEG.
Yeah. So there's plenty of people have land that would love to put solar farms in. And NYSEG says, sure, we'd love to let you do it. Give us like $5 million to connect. And it just kills the projects. Or they shoot them down. And then, of course, then they have to deal with committees like yours from a jurisdictional standpoint to get the projects done. It's really tough to get solar farms built. In fact, to the point where less than 20% of the the systems that are proposed actually get built. And it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 years to really get these systems built in a lot of cases. So, the developers are now looking at agrivoltaics because they, as much, and saying, okay, I'll take a haircut. I won't generate as much power, but I'm going to be able to build my project. Because, forgetting the interconnections, there's nothing that's going to change the interconnection. But in terms of, townships and counties and people like that, they are hoping, and it's, starting to see it, that by having this type of technology as part of it and, having agriculture along with solar instead of just saying you can have agriculture or solar is easier to get acceptance from the community. And so now they're being more willing to be a little more creative economically because the projects will be able to get built ultimately. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
I move on.
Okay. So let me show you why this is really important. When SunAgri and other companies build these projects, they build them with a control field in next to the actual field where the solar is, because they want to look at the differences between the two. So here, what we're looking at is along the top line is the control field. This is a vineyard, and the line on the bottom is the solar. And you can see some pretty significant difference in the plants and in the harvest. Oops, went the wrong way. Again, digging a little deeper, this is a different vineyard. This is under solar. This is same plants, same irrigation, everything exactly the same. It's actually probably had to be irrigated more. And you can see this was a lost crop. Now, upstate New York right now is not in a drought like this is, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be. And that doesn't mean that we weren't. I mean, this past summer, didn't we have like 4 or 5 weeks where we really
It
had like
was
no rain?
it was pretty
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Rain shut off like first or second week of June and didn't come back on till September, October.
And it was hot. So that makes a big difference. And again, here's the harvest versus that. And literally these are, 10 meters from each other. In terms of why, it's pretty easy to see. I'm going to go to the next slide because it has numbers on it. So purple is under the shading, yellow is areas where it's full sunlight. And you can see there's almost a 30-degree Celsius delta between the shaded areas from the solar and the complete sun areas, which can explain why you can get a plant that looks like that versus one that looks like that. And it translates directly to reduction in the need for irrigation. Now, again, we're not sitting in Colorado, we're not sitting in California where water is like, it's like gold, and there's, people are fighting about it constantly. But, you can see, and I'm sure the farmers in your areas are still irrigating and still spending a lot of money to do it. So being able to reduce 20, 30, 40% of the irrigation requirements is pretty significant. And oh, I apologize. I thought I had another slide that showed the frost reduction, but I think I must have taken it out. In terms of, just to show you some examples, this is a 2 megawatt system. This is over, I believe these are
Is
yeah, some type of orchard. I think this is apples. This was a small test system. This was an early system that they built. Can see
Chuck, how tall are those?
as much as 5 meters. So 12, 13, 15 feet, depends.
Is that the pretty, is there a standard you've seen for crop production in terms of height?
It's
Or
really
I guess
based
minimum height.
around the equipment more than anything else. And if you look at, again, I'm I do a lot of work. In fact, I'm working with the university here, Stony Brook University, right now on a small scale farming project, because a lot of the food production, say here on Long Island, has moved from very large farms to smaller farms just because of the cost of land and things. And a lot of their work is using handheld equipment. So in their case, we could be 8 feet high and still accomplish the same goal. The reason that these systems like this one are so high is really because of the tractor height. We need to be able to drive equipment underneath it.
All right, so if you're growing grapes, obviously they're trellised so high up, maybe they're 4, 5, 6 feet tall, so I can
Yep.
see how that would work. You're growing fruit trees, maybe they're pruned to keep them from getting too tall, I don't know, but I would assume you might have a higher arrays over fruit trees, depending on how you're pruning them.
It depends if it's an existing orchard or a new orchard, because the new orchards are typically they're smaller trees now versus years ago. In Colorado, the project that we were involved in is an existing orchard, and so that was, like I was saying, about 5 meters in height.
Okay, so as Brad was saying, so in the end, you're saying it's really equipment that seems to dictate the height as much or more than the particular crop being grown.
That's my feeling on it. Yeah, exactly.
Good, well,
Are you seeing companies experiment or develop equipment that's more adaptable for, using less turning space or lower height?
You're saying in terms of the farm equipment or the solar equipment?
Farm.
Yeah, I mean, their farming is going through that same electrification and automation that lots of industries are going through, and a lot of that equipment is smaller. Yes.
And they're already doing that in Europe, or that's much?
Yes, correct. Yeah, let me see if there was any other. Yeah, I don't see the picture that I wanted to show you. It's just, and let me just go back because, oh yeah, here we go. So you see here this kind of
Yeah,
a lot
netting
of
there.
the netting. Not uncommon that that fruit production will have this netting because of birds and also frost in some cases, and the same structure can support it. There's also examples now of think about it, the same inputs that are going to go into, hey, I'm going to move this solar panel and change its pitch for the plants. That same input could be used for, say, drip irrigation systems, things like that. And there are examples now of that being added to the mix. So same time, because the same sensors, the same weather conditions, the same growing plans could be used for decision making for that also, for when it's appropriate to irrigate. And then let me just see if there was any other picture. I think there was a greenhouse picture too. Yeah. So, and then there's some examples of greenhouses. I never got involved in a greenhouse project.
okay. Great.
So that's what I wanted to show you. But there's other examples of people just going, and just planting underneath regular solar, fixed tilt. There's a lot of things happening as it relates to that right now.
Chuck, are there any suggestions you would have for the planning committee as we talk about design requirements, for agrivoltaic systems? Are there anything that you've come across in your career where you say, gee, I wish the town didn't put that in their restriction because that just kind of pooches the whole deal?
There's a couple that I've run into. First of all, the height is an issue. Remember, I'm saying I'm going up theoretically 15 feet or more. A lot of times the towns are going to say 10 feet, 12 feet maximum height. So that could be a challenge. Setbacks could be a challenge. In the case of a solar farm that's solar only, we probably want to hide it. And we want to, there'll be screening requirements in a lot of cases, things like that. Whereas if we're going to farm, we want to try to farm as much land as possible. So we would want to not have, as much as, I mean, what's your setback now? 100 feet, probably somewhere in that neighborhood
No,
for a solar farm?
it is less.
15.
Okay, thank you, Erin. She's probably read it more recent than the rest of us. So, yeah, 50-ish. But you bring a good point, 'cause I think we have been debating, should that be made different for an agrivoltaic facility? So what's reasonable in your mind for an agrivoltaic facility?
It's going to depend on the crop, I think, to a certain extent. And that I was going to say, that's also, in a lot of areas, there's folks, well, first of all, we haven't really talked about it, but I don't know if there's also vertical agrivoltaics.
Yep.
And there's a lot of examples where you'll just widen the fields and then just grow corn or grow hay or something like that in between. So it's just, that setback is going to become more and more important. I mean, to me, you guys aren't so bad. 50 feet is not an unreasonable number. 100 is more of a challenge, in my opinion.
Give
Go ahead,
a
Will.
couple more questions. Are you seeing anybody try to add better battery energy storage at an agrivoltaic site?
Sure. It's not, I mean, the battery is more of a self-contained type of system that's going to just take up a certain amount of room. I haven't been involved in one. I have been involved in battery systems at commercial locations, say in where we had solar on the roof and then we put the batteries in the parking lot, in container-like structures. But there's no reason that wouldn't be able to be done.
And when you have a tilt system that is moving the panels,
Mhm.
if the electrical hookup to the distribution system is different? Like, does it require, does it need to be able to handle more voltage, higher
No,
voltage?
not really. It's the same inverters, it's all the same. It's just that the panels are mounted on a system that will move versus one that's fixed in one location. Sorry, in one pitch.
Anything else?
No, it's just hard to
Yeah.
imagine something moving those panels, not being like pumps on a farm.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
no, I
they're
mean,
pretty
they're
pretty lightweight. They're
Are they?
relatively small motors that are doing it. Because
Yeah.
we're gonna put motors every, like, the panels get placed in, let me share again, hang on a sec. Oops.
So they're probably not all moving at the same time.
It's not so
Um,
much that they're not moving at the same time. I just want to find a good picture. Yeah, this one's good. So you see how the panels are together. There's like a group of panels together. We call that a table. And so we might have 4 or 6 tables in a row that are tied to one or maybe 2 motors. So they're smaller motors than you would think. So, and they're going to be powered. This is grid connected, and it's just going to be powered through the grid.
Yeah, but at the distribution level, right?
Well, it's going to be front of the meter, right? And it's probably going to just be its own power
Yeah.
on the site, also taking that prior to it going into the grid.
Right, so what I hear you saying is that the power, whatever, the horsepower of those motors is not a significant
It's very
enough
small.
factor that anything
Small.
has to be particularly different.
No, nothing of real consequence. And any
Uh,
reduction in, that you would see because of the fact that we got to power those motors are going to be more than offset because of the efficiencies of that tilting to the sun.
Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
Quick question about inverters, Chuck. You mentioned
Yeah.
inverters. It made me think. I've read some things, and I know we've had some discussions about noise from inverters. What has been your experience with inverter noise on commercial solar farms?
I haven't had any dramatic problems with it. The problem is the inverters are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was, arguably is where that could occur. A
Gotcha.
lot of times we're utilizing, and I can put you in touch. I work with a Israeli company called SolarEdge, and SolarEdge has one of the most some of the biggest experience in this type of commercial inverter systems, and their technology optimizes down to an individual solar panel. And so by doing that, I believe that some of the issues you're raising get reduced.
Gotcha. Because yeah, I'm only familiar with residential solar, where a lot of the residential solar systems have microinverters. Each panel has its own inverter,
Right. Exactly.
and you don't hear anything. It's completely silent.
Mhm.
And then you go to, yeah, some of the big systems. And I guess from a planning board standpoint and thinking about noise and inverters, are these companies amenable to some sort of how do towns normally or companies normally deal with containing the sound when you have bigger inverters?
It's a matter of the placement on the site and potentially screening with vegetation, most likely.
Do they ever enclose them
Brad?
into like little sheds or buildings?
It could be
Okay.
possible. Typically, though, they're just, they're on a pylon in the ground.
Gotcha.
And Brad, just to clarify, because you weren't part of drafting the solar law originally, there are noise limits from a regulatory standpoint. There are noise limits at, say, the edge of the property boundary. How the
Sure.
company gets there, that's their business. If they want to hire these ready company with the great stuff, they want to put a house around it, we don't get into specifying how it's met. Simply, we set a limit that has to be met.
And that's what, 50, 60 decibels, somewhere in that neighborhood?
I do not recall anymore. I don't have the law with me, but yeah, it was based.
Conversation.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation on it. It was based originally on a number that NYSERDA proposed in their model law, and then we went back and forth on it, and I don't remember where we wound up on it.
It's like a loud conversation level.
Right. I haven't run into that problem in the projects I've done.
Okay, so that has not been a major problem, sir. Okay,
Thanks.
great. Anybody else have further questions? All right.
So I'm gonna get you guys. So the thing I have written down is about the pollinator seed mixes,
Yeah.
and then design requirements I wrote down, that was kind of, the problem is that's all over the map. You're saying you're looking for standards that
Well-
other communities have written? Is
I
that
think-
what you're
Or,
saying?
or,
Go ahead. I mean, what Brad asked was no-nos, right? Things that are really a problem. And what you mentioned is some of the stuff we've come across. So if you have any other further thoughts occur to you of things that, hey, I was working in town X and this requirement of theirs was really a pain in the butt. It made the project either not possible or really difficult. That's great feedback for us. I will say we're trying to write things that are flexible that give, the board reviewing the actual project some flexibility to say, we just want to ensure that it's good for the town and not, we know for sure that it's got to be 5 feet off the ground, right? Because
Yep.
it would depend on the crop and other stuff. So that's what was built in.
There's a conference that's held once a year called the Solar Farm Summit. And I've spoken at it. And every year they publish available all their presentations, and some of those presentations will be talking about the issues we were talking about. I'll send you the links to their proceedings. I
Okay.
think you'll
Thank
find
you.
some of the stuff that you're looking for there.
That would be excellent. Thank you very much.
And what's my best way to do that? Just send that to Brad and he'll distribute?
yeah,
I
that
think that's
sounds good.
great. That'd be great.
Okay.
All right, well, great. Thank you.
Great.
If
Well,
there's no
thank you
further
for
questions.
this was an interesting conversation. I'm glad to do it because, like I told you, I'm just not doing that much work on agrivoltaics these days, unfortunately, because of my family situation. So I
Well,
like
you-
to.
You clearly have a lot of experience with it, so we appreciate you sharing your time and expertise.
I'm happy to help. All right. Y'all take care.
Thanks, Chuck.
Bye.
All right. Okay, so we'll, if parts of that want to come up during our discussion of the law later, that's great. We can do that. But for now, we're gonna move on to the minutes and what the note you sent me a second ago, you showed me, I could be, Trump and read your notebook. What did you had something with the minutes you wanted to?
I just wondered if someone was taking them.
Oh, I see, taking it. Yeah, I mean, I scrawled things that occurred to me there, and if you would be willing to,
I'm taking.
You're taking minutes?
notes.
Okay,
I'll
all right,
send them
great.
to you.
Yeah,
it's,
I'm not dependable.
All right. and again, with most of what I think we're gonna be doing, I'll be jotting notes into the PDF and like I did in the other minutes, just copy and paste into minutes. But yes, okay. And yeah, and I don't know how much I could spend 2 pages talking about the presentation I just had, but I probably won't. I'll probably try out a few key points, whatever you send me, whatever I have down, that seems good. Yes,
He's talking 5 meters.
yes.
You were there, you said 5.
Oh, well, no. And I was talking lower height, he was talking upper height. He said 12 to 15 feet, which would be 5 meters for the peak height of an array.
5 meters is the.
Yeah, no, it's 3.3 feet to a meter. Yeah, I was not trying to quote him. I was saying one requirement we might have is you have to have panels at least 5 feet off the ground. That might be a good idea, might be a bad idea. He was saying towns often require no more than a 15-foot height because then it's too visually oppressive and that can be a problem for agriculture. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, but no, it was apples and oranges. I wasn't trying to. Okay, so go back to the minutes from the November meeting that I sent out a couple days ago.
The December. meeting.
Oh, sorry, December meeting. Yes, indeed. All right, and I know you had a couple comments. Oh yes, I see the bad colon and the non-bolding.
Yeah, and I just sent that to you. I didn't send it to.
Okay, all right. So, corrections, additions to the minutes. I'll go to Barb first because I know she has a couple. And the first one that she sent me that I remembered was in the list of definitions, I just didn't bold and I had an extra colon in the qualifying agrivoltaic facility definition. So yeah.
Yeah, there were just a few places that needed spacing or bolding or something,
Okay.
but the
I'm gonna say
one
we're gonna
question.
approve those. And
Yeah,
that's your
yeah,
one question.
well, you have it. I don't have it brought up, so why don't you find, could you
Yes,
have the,
I
it was in the definition of farmer, Brad, and it was something like it
Oh, right.
said, you know, the farmer in an agrivoltaic,
Okay, yes, I have it here.
and it wasn't a qualified agrivoltaic
Okay.
facility. And I think what it should say is qualified agrivoltaic facility. That's where we're concerned how a farmer is defined or not.
Yeah, so this is in the section 8.6 qualifying agrivoltaic facilities, the very last point there in which you had proposed that we use the same income requirement as New York State, and you're getting feedback on that from the Ag Committee. And yeah, it
Correct.
says the strict line is all agricultural activity within an agrivoltaic facility shall be conducted by a person or company meeting And where it says agrivoltaic facility, what that I think indeed should say, because all of this is relating to the qualifying agrivoltaic facility. So that should say within a qualifying agrivoltaic facility.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry if this is a dumb question, but why does it have to be, why do you have to have that qualification?
So not a dumb question. We've had various debates as to whether, and Brad can probably explain some of the thinking, but one of the thoughts is if we're trying to encourage farming, if part of this is not just to encourage growing crops at photovoltaic at places, but actually to encourage farming in Caroline, that we should be doing something to help farmers. And the question is, well, what's a farmer? And there are various definitions of that. This is one. The Ag Committee chose a somewhat different, more broad definition of farmer in their stuff, and we are seeking feedback. This being $10,000 is not a decision. It's a tidbit thrown out for debate.
Okay, so I mean, I apologize if this is going, I know, I've been listening to your debates on this, the discussions. I just haven't asked this question before, but do they get some sort of financial benefit by doing it? And that's why you want to qualify that they have to pay
Yes.
$1,000? Okay.
Yeah, so because the only facilities we're allowing, because anyone could grow something at a solar field if they want. But if they want to be called a qualifying one, which gives them a reduced community benefit payment to the town of Caroline, or maybe zero, and also cuts them loose on some of the regulations, like you don't have to make sure that the ground always has something growing on it, because of course you have to till every once in a while. So they get cut some breaks on regulations, and they get a financial incentive by a reduced payment to the town. So there's a benefit accrues, and therefore there should be a qualification. It was felt
Right.
of some kind.
And so I just proposed sticking with what New York State came out with, since New York State said, well, here's what we would consider, we have to have some sort of baseline standard if we're going to encourage commercial farming, since they are the ones that are going to get the tax incentive. I know, Bill, you mentioned that this is not specifically a tax incentive, but there is a financial incentive to this, that the town is trying to support commercial agriculture, is my understanding. So that's why I threw that out there. It's just trying to be consistent with what the state has.
That makes sense. Sorry, I'm just trying to organize it in my head.
Yeah.
As I say, there are no dumb questions. So. All right. And did you have anything that was the most substantial? The other stuff was just minor formatting stuff. I'll take care of. Anybody else had anything particular they noted in the minutes? And I'm going to draw your attention to a few things, because they are effectively decisions. So as I wrote in my note, last meeting on various things, we said, yeah, we'll do this thing, we make this change, but we didn't specify exact wording, because as you all know, I hate doing wording in group. So, but indeed, I'm just gonna point out that in section 1, the existing document referred to the Department of State, Office of Renewable Energy Siting, and Guillermo pointed out that is now moved, I guess, houses. So now it's the Department of Public Service, Office of Energy Siting, Renewable Energy Siting. So that is, that's a simple change to make. There had been a suggestion to add something about the reason we're doing this is to enhance and strengthen agriculture and food. And so I am proposing to add the following phrase, that we are just adding this to our purpose statement in the law, to establish regulations for such systems that enhance and strengthen the agriculture and food systems in the town of Caroline. So that becomes an addition to a long litany, well, a short litany of benefits of why there's a solar siting law.
Say that one more time.
Okay, so right now, in this purpose section, there's various reasons why it states the law is happening, and one of them, where I'm gonna add this right after, it says, for example, by furthering the installation of solar energy systems, which is what the law is trying to do, is trying to further that. And part of that benefit is then to establish regulations for such systems, such as referring back to solar energy systems, for such systems that enhance and strengthen the agriculture and food systems in the town of Caroline.
Okay. Okay.
No problem. We agreed that we would take out what seemed to be a superfluous reference to vertical facade skylights, roofing materials, and shading over windows in the definition of what a building mounted photovoltaic system is. So I just said, we're gonna strike that. For discussion, I'm gonna leave the part up on decommissioning that comes up in today's meeting. And yeah, I think anything else is controversial there. In section 5, we said yes to adding a phrase that talks about battery energy storage stuff, to your point today. So I am proposing that yes, we add the phrase, including any battery energy storage equipment and infrastructure if proposed, which is basically supposed to be listed on a map they make in the site plan.
Yeah, and when we were doing the best siting law, remember we were thinking about the fact that it could end up as a hybrid development, and so a lot of times that happens later.
Yeah.
But I think the way the best law is structured, it still brings you back into the requirements for solar.
Okay, I don't remember. I hope you're right.
Well, that was the thinking in the
Yeah.
discussion at the time.
But anyway,
Yeah.
this does, even though I think strictly they should have included it in the site plan anyway, because it's something they're gonna put there, but this just says, yeah, I mean, just mention it as one of the
Yeah.
things you should make sure you put on the site plan.
But they might not decide till later, which
Right,
we don't.
well,
have
if
to-
they're gonna add it later, then it would have to, I think, then be covered under the battery energy storage system law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Which brings it back to, yeah, okay.
Okay, and then we're gonna add a mention of existing soil types are supposed to be put on the map as well as existing vegetation. So all those are things that we said we'd do last meeting, and so I just put the words in. We also agreed that under small solar energy facilities, it had said they should do a permit. Now it's gonna say they shall do a permit, because the permit is not optional. And then in section 7, we, under the height, exactly pertaining to what was discussed today, we're gonna add a phrase that the height limit is for, it does not apply to a qualifying agrivoltaic facility. So I just add the phrase, and is not a qualifying agrivoltaic facility in the part that talks about the height limit. And somewhat for discussion later, there's a revegetation and vegetation maintenance section in section 7, which is the medium facilities. We've done all the work for the large one, and I think we'll take most of that, but I propose when we get at the meeting that we should talk a bit more about whether we cut some breaks for a medium-sized facility. Do that in a minute. And also per Guillermo's suggestion, under stormwater management, again, there's a requirement of vegetative cover, and we're providing an escape clause for a qualifying agrivoltaic facility. That's what we decided last meeting. And so now I simply inserted the phrase after soil with adequate vegetative cover must be maintained under and around the panels. That's what's existing. We are adding, however, if the facility is a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, periodic short-term bare ground due to tilling is allowed. So that's the escape clause on that. We don't have Adam. I think he did send an email out that in terms of distance for flagging, 50 feet was what DEC used. So I think we'll probably put that in, but I didn't have any of the minutes on that. And last decision we made last meeting, for which I implemented wording, was we had the original law just simply said that periodically things like noise needs to be measured. And Guillermo flagged saying, well, what does that mean? So now, where it used to say upon commissioning and periodically thereafter, this is again in section 7, which is only the medium facilities, it now says upon commissioning and periodically on a schedule determined by the review board, that it will be measured, and it rather than being should be measured is now shall be measured. So it's a requirement, and the schedule is set by the review board. So I just implemented the decision we made.
So, I don't think that this is a problem, but commissioning, refers to more than just the initial commissioning.
Okay,
So-
it means what?
Anytime you decommission.
Right, they stop for a while.
Yeah, you have to-
Okay,
Yeah, so, I just. The way it reads, it sort of sounds like, initially and then
Okay,
according to.
right,
review
so
board.
commissioning is capitalized, and we can
Yeah.
go back and take a look, and if commissioning
Yeah.
capitalized means initial commissioning and whenever it's been out of service for a while,
Yeah,
then I think we're covered.
I looked at that, and we kept it skin, it's just bare
Okay.
bones. It's covered in the code for all the operational, requirements that you have to meet for
Right, so
other agencies.
I usually suggesting that we should look at the commissioning definition or just have someone do it and say that it needs to include sort of what we might call these recommissioning sort of things, if the facility has been out of service for a while and is being started up again, that would be a commissioning. That'd be your recommendation?
No, I think the review board just needs to understand, that commissioning is broader than just the initial commissioning.
But that probably needs to be reflected in the definition that's in the law, so that there's clarity. So that the review board doesn't interpret it as only the initial commissioning.
What section is 7?
So the definition of commissioning will be in section 3, but this right now, we're talking about section 7, but exactly the same question shows up in the large facility question, which we're about to go through section 8 today. So exactly the same issue of periodic was flagged by Guillermo, and I would recommend doing, and I do recommend doing exactly the same wording there. So actually I have the law up here on my computer. So let me quickly check what it says for commissioning. Yeah, all it says is commissioning is a systematic process that provides documented confirmation that a system functions according to the intended design criteria and complies with applicable code requirements.
Right, because we need to conform to the code
All right, so
requirements.
then the question would be, I think, because you were on this
Yeah.
when we did this.
Yep.
You caught, and I think that, and at least for large ones, well, we have to review the law carefully. I'm pretty sure that you anticipated the possibility of there being like out of service for a while, and we may have a requirement that it be commissioned after that.
Yeah, so there should be
Maybe under operation.
reference, yeah, it's under the operational requirements, that's where you have to. You have to meet,
Okay, so there's nothing there. So I'm skimming it and
Yeah.
I would say let's talk about that now then. Whether this is something we need to add to the operation requirements. Which would be that, you know. Because it does say that the permittee will inform the code officer when the facility is completed and submit a signed commissioning report to the town. So that's obviously suggesting that something happens at the very beginning. And then I guess the question is, should there something be added that says if the system has been taken out of production for X period of time, you know, there must be a new commissioning report generated? And would you recommend that, Will? And then we'll discuss it as a group.
Well, is the town the only body that would require that, or is there some state level body that, you know, examines these facilities once they're out of commission and are being recommissioned?
Yeah, and I guess I'd have to look it up again. I'm trying to remember there. The operating plan has to meet code requirements. So that ends up falling either back to the code enforcement officer or to someone at the utility. I
All
guess I'd have to look it up.
Right, so here's my proposal, unless someone else thinks otherwise, is that we, meaning you will consider adding something calling for the sort of recommissioning of the system if it's been down for some period of time. And then so the two questions are, one, what should that period of time be? And do we need to do this at all? Because essentially there are already codes or other things that take care of that. So if you would be willing for our next meeting to do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might even, yeah, okay, I'll look it up.
Great. So, so basically with my reading of the changes I implemented and the, change of agrivoltaic facility to qualifying agrivoltaic facility in that one place and fixing various other typos, are the minutes approved? Okay.
I do
Yes.
have another,
On the minutes?
well, on the proposed language, and I wasn't at the meeting, so.
Okay, so which sheet are you looking at? It must be,
Looks like this. Big long
Okay.
list of number 7.
oh, yeah, yes, okay, so, that is what happened at the meeting, but we can reopen some things, so I'm gonna assume the minutes are approved. But if you want to go back to some of the language there, we can do that. So what is it you were at? Point-
Okay, so, there's just 2 places, and it is just for my information, maybe.
Okay, but you got to help locate
yeah.
us.
9 IX 7 Roman numeral.
Okay, I got
Or
that.
no, 8,
Yeah,
is
that's,
it 8.6 or?
yeah, so the minutes have 1, 2, 3, 39, but then the actual stuff taken from the law is section 8.6. And then subsection A, B, C, D, which one?
8, it doesn't have page numbers.
No, so you're at 8.
It says 7.
That's the minutes, are 0.7.
Okay,
And then you must have something,
it says if crop production is included.
okay, so yes, I think I can hopefully find,
And it.
there it is, yeah, you're okay, so you are in, indeed, section 8.6,
Oh, okay.
subpoint B,
Oh, gee.
subpoint IX, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
gotcha, it's like page 3 of the minutes, got
Okay,
it, okay.
a description of plans for the type of crops and their processing.
Mhm.
was the board thinking on-site processing or?
No, I just wanted to have an idea that, you know, that they've given thought to this being a, you know, a legit farming activity. And not just saying, oh, we're gonna grow bananas, and the review board accepts that.
Okay.
I
And
grow bananas in my greenhouse.
Okay.
Yeah, and your processing is you're gonna eat them, so.
It's a very good process.
okay. So, that's fine. That sort of kicks the can down to the review board. That's okay with me. Okay, C, going down
Mhm,
a
yep.
couple inches there. There's install a racking system, Roman numeral 4,
Mhm.
that allows complete vertical or complete horizontal panel orientation. And then Roman numeral 5 is install fixed vertical PV panels. So this list, they're all sort of ors?
Yeah, so these
Okay.
are design guidelines, and so all of them are non-required, and it's ORs, right? For example, if you want to do fixed vertical PV panels, great. You don't have to worry about your lower edge height because that's not really relevant anymore.
But if you want to do or horizontal panels, nobody's going to look askance at you not doing vertical PV panels.
Right, you can do one or the other, or some here, some there, right?
Okay, so these are all options.
Yes.
Okay, now.
These are all things that would get you brownie points. And of course, you can't simultaneously do a racking system and a fixed panel on the same panel.
Yeah, right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being totally spaced out here. Okay. Thank you for indulging me.
Okay, so moving on then, Michelle, town board report.
Well, I don't, oh, well, anyway, I don't really have anything to add other than, you know, I did update everybody right away about the, our confirmation of your appointments to the planning board.
By the way, is Aaron official now?
Yes,
Great.
so that was,
Congratulations, welcome. Yes.
and her thing goes until like, 2030, I think.
Yeah, you probably were given the longest term
Yeah.
since we were trying to be staggered.
Yeah.
And you're the newest member, so you get the latest end date.
Yep.
Lucky you, that's right. Last one standing.
Yeah, I'm a little distracted because my computer's on low battery and I'm looking for the cord. But anyway, because basically right now we're just doing the beginning of the first few meetings have just been, you know, going through ratifying, you know, this year's procedures and stuff like that. We're not really doing anything. We haven't, and at the end of the year, it was working on the budget. So
They're just getting revved up again.
yes,
Okay,
but everybody has been appointed. I thought you'd want to know. So
great, thank you.
What are you gonna call it?
I don't know if this-
oh, I asked him that, and I asked him when he was going to start thinking about that, and you know, not for a while, February or something. But that is on the agenda for later this year, changing the name. So
Okay.
soon as I know, I'll let you know.
All right, so in that case, I'm gonna move us on to, again, looking at the solar law notated by Guillermo. And back us up to a couple points in section 7 that as I went through, I said, okay, we gotta delve into this deeper. And then we'll move on to section 8, which is the large size solar things. So I'm gonna see if I can, I didn't dial in. let's see. Okay, so therefore I've got to actually join the meeting here. Apologies for a second here. I'm gonna hope that it has done its thing. Go. It's gonna work. What I'm trying to do is gotta see if this works. And last but not least, I'm going to try to share. Let's see. All right, there we go. That'll go. Yeah, you guys have a hard time seeing that. I can't make it a whole lot bigger without losing too much. But let's see what I can do. Okay, yeah, that's that it doesn't actually make it. Oh, it did make it funny bigger. Okay. How's that? It's about as big as I can get.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, there, you can see it, and then so it's just anybody in the room will have a hard time reading. But Brad, you can probably read this reasonably well at home.
Yeah, no problems.
Okay, so backing up. Oh, which computer I'm using? Okay. All right, here we go. So in section 7, which is the medium solar energy facilities, under fencing. Guillermo's note was, let's see what people right. So under fencing, he had wondered about, gee, they talk about fencing, but not vegetative screening here. And the reason is that in medium-sized facilities, we don't have a screening requirement. So I did want to bring that up. So again, a medium facility covers 2 acres or less. We just put a size limit rather than a megawatt limit, or criteria for it. And I just want to bring it up that the reason it doesn't mention anything about screening is that we didn't require any. If anybody wants to change that for these medium-sized facilities, this is the time to bring that up. Otherwise, we're going to leave it as unspecified, but I do think we need to do some work on that section for the large facilities.
I'm fine with leaving it unscreened. Or no screening requirement.
I'm good with leaving it on screen as well.
Okay, hear anybody speak up for it? We'll do that. All right, then, okay, so then we move on to this. We have noise, utility, so the revegetation and vegetation maintenance. So what we did in the large solar facility is break that into 2 pieces, one that just covers revegetation and the other that covers vegetation maintenance. And I think we can do the same here and take a lot of those words. However, this is the question now.
Well, just a note here, Bill, I'm losing my battery power.
Okay.
My computer's gonna shut down. Somebody's gotta take notes from here on in.
All right, I will try to scroll things. And okay, so here's my question. again, we are dealing with 2-acre or less facilities. Our design standards are say that mowing, if conducted, shall be done in the spring or fall, time to occur before or after key vegetation, blooming, illness and periods, whatever. And that there should be no mow zones along field edges, fence lines, wetland borders at a width determined by the review board for that facility. Okay, that's our standards. Our design guidelines say do grazing or crop production wherever possible, use at most spot application of herbicides. If conducted, mowing should be minimized no more than twice annually, preferably once a year. And if done, mowing should be done in mosaic, doing sections, doing sections, start at the center, move outward, use a high blade, use a flush bar, things like that. So what I'm wondering about is whether we take this and just drop into the middle size facilities, or do we want to ease it slightly? And that's the question. Whether to take any of those pieces out for the smaller, just medium scale facility.
I think if you're talking about 2 acres or less, yeah, I would definitely ease the requirements for some of this.
Could we just make everything guidelines, like include the same language, but make it all guidelines instead of standards? I mean, two acres is significant for, for breeding birds, and, it's certainly enough acreage to have wildlife on it if that's part of what we're trying to accomplish protection of. But if you make it guidelines, it's optional for people. I mean, they have to explain why they're not going to do it, but that's up to the review board to say, okay, we agree with your explanation. Which that's
because you also have to think about, it's a system that small, that's not making any money to hire a company to come in here and do something professionally. So it's probably going to be a homeowner or a small landowner or small investor. And, I think the question for the committee is, do we want to encourage that or discourage that? And if we want to encourage that, I would agree with Barb, move everything to guidelines rather than hard requirements.
And I'm good, we have 2 or 3 of these in the town. One just off 79, that is run, it's owned by a company. I actually don't know who does their day-to-day stuff. And the other 1 or 2 are Ed Copes. I'm sure he does his own maintenance.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so you're right, Brad, how you characterize the typical ownership model for that. And I'm fine with that suggestion. Okay, so all of that will be guidelines for the medium scale. Great. Like that. All right. Okay. Then down under the operations section, 7.5 here, we had talked about this in committee, which is that subpoint D says equipment and vehicles not used in direct support, renovations, additions, or repair of the facility must not be stored or parked on the facility site. And Guillermo had flagged that saying, what about, farm equipment that might be parked there for a while? Maybe make an exemption for that. And I think if I recall the discussion, it was like, well, that would typically be considered indirect support. So we didn't feel the need to change anything. And thereby we could indeed say that. But I, upon reflecting, wondered whether we should add, to make it totally clear, just add a sentence saying, equipment related to farming and agrivoltaics operations on a qualifying agrivoltaic facility are considered to be in direct support. And I bring it up now in part because, again, we're going to hit it again for the similar condition under the large facilities. So do we feel the need to beat people over the head with that or not?
I would,
You would?
yes, because, I know that people drive by our place and they think it's a farm if they don't know what a farm really looks like. And people who know what a farm looks like, looks at the vehicles and goes, those aren't farm vehicles, that's not a farm. So
Other
that's
thoughts?
why I would put it in.
People, it's one more line on a 20-page law, so.
It's good to be clear. I think.
So we'll go
I don't think it hurts to put it in there. There's no harm. We're not saying anything different, so why not just be more clear?
Okay, all right, so we'll go ahead and add that. All right, so then we actually get to move on to a new section of the law. Section 8. Okay, so these are the large solar facilities, more than 2 megawatts and up until or actually more than 2 acres, sorry, up until they reach the megawattage at which the state takes over. And the first comment Guillermo made had to do with this community meeting. Again, this language mostly comes out of the model law we were working on. And it called for one community meeting, and I'll explain that in a second, on a timeline that was basically around the time of the preliminary site plan review. Now, since this time, the site plan law has been changed, and there is no longer a preliminary site plan review. This also mentions that the meeting is for community members who may be adversely impacted. And Guillermo asks, basically, is it the public or what? And so it seems to me, yes, that this does not simply need to be, that wording, I think, begs the question of whether it has
For
to,
supporters too.
it should be for everybody.
For anybody.
And yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I think the language could use some work there. Okay, so,
Can I say something?
yes.
Well, this sounds like the requirement that it's a public hearing.
No, it's a community meeting.
It's different from a public hearing? That's
Exactly.
required?
And I'm gonna go through all that right now, if I can find my
Okay.
notes. Let's have earlier. And usually I didn't mean to like stomp on you, but that's exactly the point, is that it's
Okay.
not a public hearing. There is a public hearing as part of the process.
Right,
This
yeah,
is
that's what I
something-
thought. This seems
Yeah, and
ridiculous.
this is something different. Okay, so things that are problematic are referencing the preliminary site plan review, but also in some ways that occurs somewhat late in the process. And Guillermo's saying you should really get this out there in front of the public as soon as possible. And I agree with that intent. I did ask him, he suggested he could give us some thoughts on what to do. And we had some back and forth, and he had less that than this following statement he gave me was, he said, I think the actual number of such meetings is less important than having it be a meeting that provides real opportunities for engagement between the public, legislators, and other officials, and the developer, rather than just a presentation or formal town meeting with a public comment period. The latter is the public hearing. The timing, in my opinion, would be to hold the first one as soon as possible, as soon as there's an application to the town, or even earlier, if possible, when the landowner is first serious about entering into an agreement with the developer. So that was the feedback I got from him. So I went back and I took a look at what's in the site plan law. So again, this community meeting specified in the solar law, if we get rid of the word preliminary, would be when the applicant files paperwork for their site plan, which is different than like being about to have a meeting with the review board, because you file your paperwork with them, they take a look at it, say, is it complete or not? Maybe you got to give them some more things, and then finally they will schedule a meeting or meetings in which they discuss the project with the developer. So filing the paperwork is sooner than the public hearing, certainly, but it's an unknown time. But here's what we have now. The site plan procedure is for larger projects, and this would qualify, there is what they call a sketch plan. That's the first step. The sketch plan conference is required between the review board and the applicant prior to the preparation and submission of a formal site plan. So that's language I just took straight from the zoning law. So that is relatively early in the process. In other words, there's not even a formal application yet, but they're planning to do this. And before they do a lot of work, the intent is to have an initial meeting with the review board so they can learn all the requirements and get some initial guidance so they aren't too far off base. So that's a relatively early meeting. Then at some point, there is submission of materials for the site plan. And then as happening in there, the review board may send out some of that stuff to county officials or other state officials who might be affected, impacted, have input. Definitely somewhere in there, and it has to happen before the public hearing, the county reviews things. It's called the 239 review. So there's a review by the county 10 days before the public hearing. If there are ag district properties in the area, there's something called an ag review, which is required by ag law. There's going to be seeker as all part of this process. And then finally, there's a public hearing. So there's a sketch plan, then the materials come to the review board. They either ask for more or they don't. They say it's complete. Once they have everything, then there has to be a hearing. Once they decide that the site plan application is complete, there has to be a hearing within 62 days of that. And then there's a bunch of notification requirements of who gets notified, which we'll go through probably in a minute. And then there's a public hearing.
So why not require a community meeting between the sketch meeting with the review board so after that, but prior to the submission of the of the site plan, I guess would be because the whole idea of the community meeting is to do it when the developer can still make changes to their plan.
Correct. And I agree completely.
It should be win-win too, because developers would benefit
Yeah,
from it.
absolutely. From the input, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
sounds good.
Yeah, so I don't have great minds think alike. Right? So I don't have formal language here, but I had some points I hope we could coalesce around and then something be written up.
Mhm.
So I'm suggesting I would propose 2 community meetings, as long as, but they definitely be open to the public. That they be noticed, in the official newspapers, like a public hearing, but also, yes, that adjoining and abutting property owners get something, but there should be something, hopefully the town will send it out on a listserv too, but it should go out to the public.
Yeah.
And yes, so now timing. Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to tie it, or I said, maybe one before the sketch plan is submitted, but maybe it needs to be around when the sketch plan is submitted. It might be that it would be useful for them to get informed before they do the sketch plan conference, but that's really up to them. I don't know how to phrase it, but sometime near the sketch plan. You think it should be after sketch plan?
I mean, the way that you describe the sketch plan, it sounds like they're getting direction from the review board about what's expected of them, so. I'm not sure that doing it prior to that would be necessary, since they may be modifying what they're gonna do or tailoring what they're gonna, present or develop or plan based on what they learn from the review board.
Okay.
But
So
I don't feel
sure.
strongly about that, but
Yeah.
it just seems like in terms of sequencing, to have a meeting before, there's sufficient thought in the process. I'm not sure what people would be meeting about, unless they have something to react. I mean, that's kind of, rule 1 of public participation is public can't participate unless there's something that draws them in, and people aren't going to be drawn in unless there's some formation of an idea. You just say, oh, I care about this.
And so you're saying developer would give the sketch plan to the review board, and then when they do that, then the review board gives them some feedback. And then we would have the first meeting.
Yeah.
Did I get
Yeah,
that?
I think
I
that's,
think that's good too, because once the review board has the sketch plan and has had a chance to look it over a little bit, they've had a chance to gather what the requirements are.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good, right? Yeah.
so, so I agree. I'd like to tie it in some way though to the sketch plan conference. Like, should we say it has to be within 30 days of having had the sketch plan conference, within 2 months? I don't know how long these things really take. What I
Right.
don't want to do is then say, oh, 2 years later, when they're really about ready to submit their site plan, they suddenly go to the public.
Yeah, I guess
So-
I would, I would say a minimum of 90 days. I mean, just because if you run in, to holiday season, like if you do the sketch meeting in November, I mean, basically you don't want to have a public meeting in December, or early January, just because of all the holiday stuff going on. So I'm just thinking 90 day, within 90 days.
Okay. I'm only concerned that that might be, again, that literally they were planning to come in a month later, maybe they don't with their actual final site plan. Maybe it should be within 90 days and definitely before they submit the final site plan.
Well, yeah, before, I mean, it's gotta be before they submit the site plan, that's the idea, but you don't wanna give them too short a time.
Well, you could just simply say something to that effect of it
Yes.
needs to happen prior to submission of your full site plan, but no less than 90 days following the sketch plan.
And
Yeah.
perfect, it's
Yeah.
roughly the words I just jotted down. So I agree. That sounds good to me.
So,
I have a question about the community. What's the purpose?
Okay, so, I actually add some words. So the purpose of the meeting for sure is to alert the community that there's this big thing going down. Okay, so that's just part of it. And so it's for them to learn about it. So typically there's going to be a presentation by the developer. Here's what we want to do, It would behoove the developer to perhaps, sort of have a Q&A session and other way, try to involve the public and get some feedback from them about, are you guys happy with this? Are you unhappy with this? Are there the ways we could change it to make you more happy? That would behoove them, but I don't know what to do. So I did have the suggestion that maybe we say that the developer is encouraged to conduct the meetings such that there is dialogue between the applicant and the public and local officials. That's not necessarily final wording. That's just my point. So what do you think, Brad?
I don't know. I just, questions always go through my head when it's like, okay, well, we got the rules. The rules are in the book here, or that's where we're trying to make the rules. And then you say, well, then let's invite the public. And it's one thing to, I guess, inform the public and so that they are aware of the project. But what if someone just says, who's not a neighbor, they just happen to be a town of Caroline resident, but maybe don't even live near this person. And they say, well, I don't like the looks of it, or I don't like solar, or, you got some crazy people down in North Carolina who think that solar facilities steal the energy from the sun and deprive it. I mean, I kid you not, there's some crazy people out there. So what happens from these meetings if there's a big objection, yet it's purely maybe an aesthetic objection, and the site plan and the plan from the developer meets all the other requirements, but the community, the handful of people might just not like it for one reason or another, even though they're otherwise not adversely impacted. This talks about adverse impact. Well, I'm just like, what's the
We're
adverse
getting rid of
impact?
that language. So, yeah, I'm getting rid of that language. Let's see what other people have to say. What I would say, Brad, is in the end, that's the review board's job to decide whether to translate any of that community feedback into strong suggestions to the developer. The developer can choose to take it or leave it themselves right out of the community meeting.
Sure.
They can certainly weigh the fact that, that person if they engage in conversation, might realize they're actually not from around here, or whatever. I don't have a problem, actually. I mean, good ideas come out of anywhere. So if the developer wants to pay attention to those, they can. What they really have to pay attention to is the review board. And then the review board has to weigh, various factors and, certainly feedback from the community. That's why there's a public hearing. So I don't see it as a big problem that there's a community meeting, even if a bunch of people jump and shout and yell and get really angry. We've been through that.
I guess that's why I'm just trying to understand the point of the meeting. What are we trying to get out of it? And what since I've obviously never been through the process, so
in general, the worst thing to do in public affairs is to spring a project on people at the late stages when a lot of decisions have been made.
Like at the public hearing.
Right. So if people are first hearing about this project at a public hearing, there's all hell to pay, because then they're not part of the process at a time when they can make impact decisions, and they feel like, why the hell, excuse me, are you doing this? You're just doing this for lip service. There's nothing really that we can do. So there's a lot
is
of
there
benefits
anything
to
really
getting
they can
out.
do other than lip service? I mean,
Yeah,
if they're not on the review board.
Absolutely. If people, I think, have valid concerns, valid that they can argue to the review board and the developer, here's why we're unhappy about this. If you just change this other way, that's not enforceable, but I think it can have an impact on the proceedings. But that's just me.
I think it could bring up points that would end up in the host community agreement. That's a possibility.
Or they're doing something and the person who lives down the road says, or even my wife who lives 10 miles away says, I happen to know that there's a screech owl that nests in that woods. If you could just move over a little bit and leave that stand there, wouldn't that be cool? And something like that did happen. There was a review of a property division here in the town of Brooktondale, where a local resident brought up something about how that yard floods all the time, and it wasn't on the flood map, but they still made some changes based on that. So there's local knowledge that can get incorporated. So anyway, I think it's, having been around this more than once, it's really good to get the public involved early, both to make the project better, but also to avoid those surprises where people just get pissed off because they didn't hear about it and suddenly it's about to break ground, in a couple of weeks. My 2 cents.
Yeah.
All right, so we got this one. I do think that there should be maybe an additional community meeting, and I said around the time the site plan is actually submitted. Or maybe it's around the time the review board says the application is complete.
So when the review board is doing their review, what is the opportunity for the public?
There is one public hearing. They can go to the review board meetings.
But they don't speak up?
You can do privilege of the floor at review board meetings.
Okay, but it's not a dialogue.
I don't believe so. I'm not on the review board. I haven't been to those, but the typical procedure would be that there's privilege of the floor and not, unless there's only a few people, maybe they do back and forth. I don't know the answer. And I was taking the right.
When there's only a couple people, I think they've done a back and forth from what I'm thinking.
So you have an inside track on.
No, I've only been to a few. I mean, Michelle knows what I do.
I think the official procedure is, it's not a back and forth. But I think if there are just a few people there, in all, like for the town board and other committees, it's up to the discretion of the person conducting the meeting as to whether it's a back and forth. Does that make sense?
So my concern with the second community meeting is not making it too close to the public hearing and not making it too close to the, I guess I wasn't clear when you said kind of tie it to the review board decision. I'm
No,
not.
the decision is the application is complete, not the decision on the project.
Yes, okay, so
then they
the
go through the-
application is complete, so how does that relate then to the timing of a public hearing?
62 days.
Meaning what, 62
It
days?
says the hearing has to be held within 62 days of the acceptance of the application as complete.
So what would be the purpose of a community meeting then?
Because this first community meeting could have been 2 years before that.
But if you have a public hearing that has to occur, I mean, it just seems to like asking the public to attend two major meetings within the space of 60 days is a lot. And, you know, one that would be, you know, supposedly discussion oriented and one that would be, I mean, public hearings are by their nature are combative. I'm not sure what a community meeting is going to accomplish because you've already submitted something that you're not going to be making changes to because you want your 62 days to run out and so you can move forward, you know what I mean?
I do. I
I agree.
disagree. And the reason I disagree is that from when the sketch plan was submitted, which is when people heard about the project,
Yeah.
to when the application is complete, the design has probably changed.
Well,
And I think the public deserves to know about that, so they could then inform any comments they give to the review board as the review board is reviewing the project.
so the second community meeting would be more informational than information gathering.
Yeah, again, how they're set up depends on the developer, I think, runs these, but yes, I think that good point, it might well be.
Is the public hearing after the review board approves or before the review board?
It's part of the approval process, so it's definitely before they approve.
So when
Sure. So then
when
why
you-
have the second community meeting if you're having a public hearing? I mean, is that not the same thing?
No, and again, my view, not to be too stern about it, a community meeting is a chance to, just get information out, hopefully get information back from the public if that is provided. It's just a very informal, informational exchange system. A public hearing is a very formal process in which basically the developer doesn't say squat. The public comes and gives their 3 to 5 minute piece, maybe submits written materials. It is an intake only event in general. And so it's not an information delivering or information exchange medium. So they have very different functions as I see it. And just because the process for a large solar facility can be long, I thought there could easily be 2 community meetings throughout the process. I don't know how to time that.
So why not have a second community meeting before, before the site plan or the complete application is made to the review board? I mean, that's the piece that I don't understand. Why have a community meeting after you've already submitted your final documents? And so if the purpose is to inform the public and get feedback before you finalize your site plan, absolutely, that's fine.
I'm okay with something like that. I'm trying to think of some place we have it around the sketch plan part, and the only other real trigger is the site plan.
Yeah, so we've said
applications.
we've said this, the first community meeting has to occur within 90 days of the sketch plan meeting.
Mhm.
And then the
And
second
before-
community meeting can occur.
Well-
We could say 30 days before the site plan.
What
final
if we
completion?
just, I have a suggestion. What if we drop the second requirement for a second community meeting if there were no major changes? So like the concern was, okay, you had a community meeting. Well, maybe the sketch plan or whatever changed because of that community meeting. Okay, now you go back to have another community meeting because you basically need to resubmit a new sketch plan. And if your sketch plan doesn't change from that community meeting, why have a second community meeting?
I guess I don't feel having the meeting is a big burden. If you're someone who's hot and bothered about the project, I've gone to many more than 2 big meetings in 60 days, so I'm not as worried about that side of it.
Okay.
So I guess, again, I'm more for the engage the public end of things, but we can.
Sure,
we
but I
can
just like if
use
it
on
hasn't
this.
changed, what Barb was saying is that if nothing's changed, what are you talking about? You already talked about it.
But then the public would wanna know nothing's changed also. So how do you get that information out? Can you tie it to the submission of the site plan?
Yeah, mine said, my proposal is, on or around the time the site plan is submitted is what I was sort of proposing. But, again, that could be in quick succession after the sketch plan conference. I have no idea. I don't know how these things
Yeah.
go in practice.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not convinced that a community meeting after all the materials have been submitted to the review board accomplishes much of anything. Unless it's truly to simply explain the site plan to the public, but then, you're gonna have people wanting to comment on it,
Right.
but then they also have to comment at the public hearing. So I mean, which seems to me that it would then decrease the attendance of people who are in support of the project at the public hearing, because they've already been to the community meeting and said, oh yeah, great idea. No need for me to come to the public hearing. So then the only people who come to the public hearing, which is held, a month or two later, is everybody who's pissed off about it. So I'm not quite seeing the logic of it.
Okay. I mean, I expect it's not a month or two later, because once the reviewer gets the materials for a significant solar project, I don't think they're gonna deal with it in a meeting or two. So I think there's probably a substantial amount of difference.
But we
in
said the
time.
62 days you have to have a
Once
public
they say
hearing,
it's
but then-
completed. So there's a difference between the site plan materials coming in and it being decided it's completed. Now, again, that might be the same time, or that might be
Okay.
separated in time, but you're right,
Okay.
there's most 62 days in there. Again, which I find to be a lot of time, but maybe you don't, I
How does-
agree to disagree.
How does ORS fit into the schedule?
I'm not sure, they don't impact this schedule because this is below the threshold at which they regulate. I don't know what they specify for large projects. Is that?
Oh,
your
we're
question?
still on, I'm sorry, we're still on meeting.
Well, the community meeting, and ultimately, none of this has to do with the OREs, because they only regulate 20
Yeah.
25 megawatt and above, and we
Right,
don't have anything to say about that.
sorry, I
So-
thought we were there.
No, we're never gonna get there. We're never gonna get there.
Well, I agree. but-
All right.
Yeah,
Okay. All right,
That changes my thinking about the second community meeting.
all right. Okay,
Thanks
so.
for reining me in there.
No worry. Let's leave the number aside for a minute so that we can make some progress. Come back to that point. I was again suggesting maybe throwing in some wording that about the intent of the meetings. That, there be a dialogue.
Yep.
And then I had another sentence I didn't tell you guys about, which looks like it'll get even more support. Which said that if there are significant project changes during the site plan review process, additional public meetings are encouraged. Now, maybe we can just have that and only call for the one community meeting.
Sure, but I would call them additional community meetings.
Yeah, sorry, you're right.
Not public meetings.
Additional, yes, it's supposed to be community meetings. You're right.
Okay.
I was,
Yeah.
sprawling. Okay.
And tell me again, what section are we in?
Oh, this is 8.2.
Okay, and in the current law,
It-
section 8 is large solar energy.
Yes, this is only applies to large solar energy facilities, this community meeting.
Right.
Which is more than 2 acres and less than, obviously, again, 20 to 25 megawatts. I mean, between 20 and
Okay.
25, the developer can decide to go local or state,
Okay,
and above 25, it is definitely the state.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so with that, I guess I'm willing to reluctantly abandon the requirement for a second meeting. Given that they're gonna be encouraged to have others if there's changes. And we'll leave it at that. All right, it is 9:25. We don't actually have a ton of things that we haven't dealt with, but there are some. Let me just take a look here. And if we can't get done in the next 5 or 10 minutes, we'll just put it off. one here. Okay, yeah, so if we rejected something already in the other, so this is a comment from Guillermo, it says, about the timing of when things are leased and legal consent, et cetera. And he was wondering about changing the timing to be the beginning of the leasing period, and I found the language, we said last time the language we had was adequate, and I'm gonna assume we all feel the same. So I'm not gonna read that in any detail. And then we get down to, okay, oh yeah, we better put off next meeting. Screen planting plan. I think we need to think about this a bit. So homework between now and February meeting, which we talk about in a minute. So all we have in the law right now is there should be a screen planting plan. There's no guidance about what it should say or be or do or anything like that. And maybe, yeah, probably we should say a little something. And also about whether, in which ways a qualifying agrivoltaic facility might be exempt from that. So, let's say that we're all gonna think about screen planting plans between now and next meeting. And, shoot some emails out, and then we'll coalesce around something, next meeting.
I'd just like to remind everyone that when we went to the Carpenter Farm, I think it was the developer, or maybe it was Caleb, they were talking about how the kinds of landscaping that typically gets done for screening, a lot of people find it ugly. And that they just soon have apple trees or something like that out there. And I thought, wow, that's great. So, anything in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the suggestions Guillermo says, if there's gonna be fruit trees that, because typically people want fast growing species, but fruit trees aren't that, but fruit trees are good, so you should allow people to do that. So I think that's the sort of thing we need to write up, so. And yes, righto, 50 feet for the public roads, it is. Yeah, up from the residents, property lines, yeah, there was 200 feet from non-participating property lines. If it has a house on it. All right.
Was it for the panels?
It's a little unclear, because the facility shall meet the requirement, and actually I think what Guillermo says, he said, what did he say? Question was. I don't remember now, yes, yeah, I don't know, I guess I would say. Yeah. So we can think about setbacks also for next meeting. It's a tough one. Height, we had given a variance for qualifying agrivoltaics for this medium. I would propose we do the same for this one. And so that's what I say here. Yes, we will do that. Okay, and Ryan, yeah, so we're gonna do the screen planting stuff. We're gonna work on screen planting for next time. That's what this point is to put in something. We did the revegetation, vegetation maintenance. We have worked on that a lot. We have that all set up. Stormwater management, again, same language as we had in the medium facilities. So I propose that we put in that same escape clause for agrivoltaics on the vegetation requirement and the keeping it vegetated. For anything new. Okay. This point here, which has to do with agriculturally important areas and the fact that they have to follow these guidelines for solar energy properties, projects. And Guillermo said, wait a minute, those only apply to big things. That was a misreading, because we are applying it to all large scale facilities, independent of how many acres they occupy. So they do have to follow those guidelines if they're a large project and we identify it as an agriculturally important area. So I think we can ignore his comment there. the operational requirement. Uh, Okay, so we have brain power. Okay, brain power for a couple more things. All right, here's what he said. All right. So-
I need to interrupt. I have
You-
to go
oh, you
to
have to go?
wake at 5 a.m.
Oh, okay. In that case, I think this is a fine time to end. I do give me one more minute. Let's talk about the next meeting. We'll just end here. That's fine. Is that gonna be a general issue for you?
Yeah, it's my schedule for work.
Okay, can I talk to your boss?
I'd love that.
All right.
Back to 8, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Some of us work in the morning.
Yeah. So, okay, next meeting, we'll talk more about that. We've been doing 7:30. It's a little easier for me on my dinner schedule, but if it's a problem for you, because we will usually be done by 9:30, but sometimes it's 9:40.
To participate for the whole meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean,
So-
going over 2 hours is rare. It's only because we had that thing. So I think it'll be almost never. I sort of promised people that we would go past 9:30. So we will stop now. However, next meeting, which we had scheduled for Tuesday, February 17th, I'm gonna be gone that week. Do people have the week after open? Is Tuesday, February 24th? Okay,
No.
okay. Any days that week okay for you?
Wednesday and Thursday of that week are fine with me.
Okay, Wednesday, Thursday, either,
I can't Wednesday,
so do
but
Thursday?
Thursday is fine.
I'm unpredictable.
Yeah, it's true. Brad, Thursday,
26th.
the 26th?
Should be fine.
Okay, that's what we'll do. And yeah, 9:30, we should quit anyway. So I apologize for going this long, but
Very
we didn't have a
productive.
presentation. Okay, we will pick up here in section 8. We're on the operational requirements, so you can take a look at what Guillermo wrote, and maybe I'll send this along because it has some of my responses to his things in it. So I'll send you this version out. So start there, and we have to think about screen planting plans, and that may be most of the things that we will have feedback from the Ag Committee next time, Brad.
Hopefully.
Okay, and then I think we'll be able to sort of put the wraps on this.
And I'm looking back into the code.
Yes,
That
that's right.
backs up section 5.6.
Yeah, yes, in particular, it has to do with, well, and also about commissioning, what commissioning means, other things to do with
Yeah,
commissioning.
that's the 5.6 is where the general reference to the meaning of the code is.
Okay,
I'll just look at what's
Have a
behind
good
it.
night.
good night.
Next.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm gonna end the meeting then and stop the recording.
Good night,
Thank you
guys.
all.